Has anybody heard of this guy before, Brandon Keys? Is that why a lot of the ladies have came today? Just kidding. That was a joke. Brandon, just real quick, tell everybody who you are, what you've been up to.
Yeah, so I'm Brandon Keys. I started a media company called Green Candle, all around Bitcoin in the traditional financial system about 4 years ago. Right now, I have a top 5 Bitcoin podcast in views for the year of 2025, top 1% YouTuber, and I spoke at 10 different conferences in 10 different countries this year. So I've been
Really?
on the move a lot, to say the very least.
Gosh.
Yeah, and one of them was actually down in Mexico
Oh,
with,
the
with
Yucatan
Car,
when we did
yeah.
it, yeah.
So
Cool.
I've been a part of the startup days and a lot of stuff doing that they've been doing here at PlebLab for a while. So I've seen the growth of PlebLab and yeah, a lot of familiar faces and also some new ones here tonight. So I'm excited to see all you guys.
Cool. So let's just kind of get into marketing and content because I know that's what you do. You work with a ton of brands in the Bitcoin space that pay for your consulting and stuff when it comes to like marketing in the Bitcoin space and the ecosystem. Um, can you tell us just kind of what are the things that you see over and over again amongst all these brands in the ecosystem or just in general in technology amongst like startups or whoever that you see the same problems, the same winners, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I see a mix of two different things. A lot of the builders, a lot of the people that are just starting out always put marketing to the back burner. They say that they will start later, social media or something like that. Marketing in a sense is not really at the forefront. And I think that's a huge mistake. If you look at a lot of the big brands today, including technology brands, obviously one of them is Apple, right? So Steve Jobs and the Apple events that they have every single year are massive events. And now, Apple essentially does their own marketing with, being able to promote their new product launches and everything else. In the Bitcoin space specifically, one that always comes to mind, his name is Jack Mallers. For those of you who don't know who he is, and his company Strike. He recently rang the bell at the New York Stock Exchange on Tuesday, taking a company called 21 public. He went from basically nothing to the third largest Bitcoin treasury in the world in basically a couple months simply because of his personal brand. So if you go to X or any social media account and you look up Jack Mallers, he's got nearly 500,000 followers there. And if you go look up his company, Strike, it's got maybe a fifth of the total following count. And that's for a good reason. Jack goes around and speaks a lot about Bitcoin and his company. And so his company gets indirect marketing simply by him going out and making different appearances. So a big mistake that I see with a lot of Bitcoin founders and just generally in founders is that they're afraid to start marketing until they have something to market. When in reality, when you're starting to put out content or you're starting to, build your social media following, it'll just be a few friends at first. It takes a while to build these things up. And I think the misconception with social media is that it's very easy and that you'll blow up very quickly. And so you're afraid to put anything out because I'm not ready for thousands of people to come to my products. When in reality, you're going to be learning and filtering out your audience and finding people who are interested in your product over time and kind of creating those true valuable fans. So Jack, who I brought up a little bit earlier, he did this by going on CNBC, going on a bunch of different podcasts early on, and paying for a lot of appearances to go on traditional media, speak at conferences, do all these different things. And Strike was doing a lot of the marketing, paying a lot of that up front. Now they don't market at all, and they're able to raise money very quickly. And that's all because of the CEO's personal brand that he's built. So I think, if you're looking and kind of getting started, that's a big mistake that I see a lot of companies just making is that they, Bitcoiners and, AI developers, they always like to kind of hide behind the computer and not really be forward facing. And I think there's a huge gap in the market for people to just be forward facing. And there's a few different ways. Maybe we can go over that on how I think you can build trust. But I think starting early and often is a big mistake that I see a lot of people make.
Um, outside of that, what's the most common kind of founder delusion do you see in the Bitcoin space that you keep running into? Whether that's ones that you're partnered with or working with, or ones that you're consulting for.
Yeah, I think it's
No names.
yeah, no names for sure, but I think it is also somewhat of the, I guess, delusion when you put it out on social media that everybody's going to remember it, and like nobody's going to forget that one little thing. If you tweet out an announcement, the reality is that the way of social media and the way of life in general right now is that people get fed so much information all at once. So take the risk, tweet something, go, even sometimes reply to people, and maybe they don't even really see it. But I think the thing that I see a lot is that people are just worried, hey, what if I announce this too early and then I don't cash out on that? And that comes back to the point with Jack Mallers. He went out on stage a couple years ago and announced that we would be able to pay in Bitcoin at Walmart and everything like that. He announced that at the Bitcoin conference. And I saw it the other day. He's still getting replies to that today. But one thing that he did is he built it all out in public. He put his goals out there in public. And sure, some people maybe, hold that against him. But you also got to think he's got 500,000 people that are following him that are going that way. So if you tweet out something, or if you post something about a product development, and maybe something crashes or it's not all you think it lives up to, because you're going to be your harshest critic. I think just founders have that mindset where they're essentially afraid and they think everybody's going to see it. And I think you just need to have that kind of more fearless mindset when it comes to the marketing stuff, and you can figure out what works. And a big thing in the startup space in general is just failing early and often. And I think people are really afraid to do that, especially on social media. And so that's why I encourage people to just build a personal brand, because if you fail on the first venture, maybe it takes you 20 ventures down the line, but you already have that audience, so you can kind of figure out where your what your audience wants, the products they want, and kind of go from there.
Who in the room is a founder working on a project or a product? Just be curious. Okay, so most of the room, yeah. What do you do if you're somebody like me that doesn't have Twitter or some of these other socials? How do you get started doing that from zero? Or somebody that has a smaller following like Ted, right? Like, and he's trying to grow his brand and his social capital, I guess. How do you get that to grow over time?
Yeah, I mean, just make an effort to do it, right? Make a goal for yourself, something small, like 5 tweets a day or something like that, or maybe even just 3. Tweet out at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or something like that. Just small little goals that you can make sure that you can do it every single day so you don't get burned out. And then, kind of take a step back and, like, at the end of the day, take note of what works, because social media will always leave clues on what works and what doesn't. I mean, it's the best feedback system that there is. So this is how you can test messaging. This is how you can test, whether it's a joke or a meme or something. You can just put something out there and see what people really reply to. And I think a big thing is that not only do, if you're worried about a brand or anything else, like, people want to do business with people. So even if you don't have a brand, or if you have a small following, most of my posts on LinkedIn are when I post something about traveling, or, sitting at a cafe, on an island in Greece or something. That's the most interaction I get. When I post about, I had a big client success, that doesn't get as much interaction. And I think that's because people want to do business with people. They don't want to think that you're this person that's just go, 24/7, 365. They want to build a relationship with you. They want to, see you grow throughout all of this. And, I think at the end of the day, people are just looking for connection. And that's what social media really allows people to do, is build that connection kind of digitally. So using that, not taking yourself too serious on these social media platforms, that's how you can just grow in general. Like, you don't necessarily need to have a product or need to have a reason. Of course, if you niche down, maybe it's easier to grow that way, but you can kind of find your tribe, so to speak, by just posting about things you like to do, whether that's travel, health and wellness, exercise, all of these different things that you can just post about in your daily life. And then, when you promote your product or you start building something or you start something, you're not starting at ground zero. You have a baseline already.
Yeah, so I got a follow up to that. What do you do if you're like somebody that's an introvert? We got a lot of introvert builders in the ecosystem that aren't comfortable, getting out of their little shell. But they are funny people, or they are very, they are popular amongst their little small group. But how do you reach that person to still come out of a shell and do some social capital building?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely difficult, but like I said, I think you have to make a conscious effort to do it. You can sit and talk to a camera, and it's not going to be the easiest thing in the world. I mean, I've done it now for 3 or 4 years, but if you look back at the videos when I first started doing it, it's not natural to sit and look at a camera that's not talking back to you. You're essentially talking to a wall, right? So I know some people will joke that they can go out and do that, but it's not a natural skill. And I think, social media, like I said, it is a feedback method. So not to get discouraged right away, but just to understand like, hey, I'm doing this to practice on a few different things, because you're going to have to get in front of people eventually if you want to build a business, right? You're going to have to pitch in front of investors at some point in time. This is just a skill that you're working to essentially like help you, and it'll pay dividends down the line. So it's something just to work on. So I think it isn't natural, and even somebody that's extroverted, and I would categorize myself as probably an extrovert. I like to go out and be social and everything like that. So.
You even ran with the bulls too, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. I'm a wild man, So, but I would say that a lot of people that I've met are actually pretty introverted. One of the companies I work with, many of you probably know them, is TFTC and Marty Bent. He's had one of the most viewed podcasts in the Bitcoin space for years. I think he's going on like 8 years or something running. And I've just gotten through to him to start doing some monologues to the camera right now. And that's like 8 years down the line. And he's struggling with it because he's an introvert, and he's kind of asking me for some advice of doing that and how that would look. So, if somebody like that, who's literally been recording conversations for over 8 years, is still having that, imposter syndrome when it comes to talking to the camera, I mean, I think it comes just to everybody. So, like I said, I think it's just kind of working that muscle, and you'll get more comfortable over time. Like, the first thing you put out is never going to get 100,000 views or millions of views. It's all building. Like, I mean, if you go look at my YouTube channel and you go look at the early videos, they were getting like 20 views on them. For probably, honestly. I think, I showed a screenshot of it when I was at the startup day in Mexico, and it was literally like a couple of them were like 14, 20. And like, I was like freaking out when I hit that publish button, like, oh my God, so many people are going to see this. And, it's 14 people. So, now it's a little different of the story, but like I said, it takes years to build up that.
What do you say to the people that, because there are people online or even on other social platforms that'll say like, oh man, like you're doing it so cringe, and it's not gonna go anywhere. Like, just the haters. Like, how do you handle all the hate and the people that are like trying to knock you down?
Yeah, I mean, for every one negative comment, you get like 99 good ones, but you'll always remember the negative one, So I think you just have to, it's like, hate me or love me, you watched. That's all you could do, a kind of mindset. Like, at the end of the day, like, they're consuming your content for a reason, right? So you can't let that stop you. I mean, a lot of you guys are coming to this as like building a business. If you guys were worried about like what everybody would think of you building a business, you probably wouldn't have started. And it's the same thing with content. I think, when I was first, starting the podcast, like all my friends were initially here in Austin where I was growing up, all of them, were first subscribed, oh, great job. And then after like 3 or 4 months, they started making fun of me for it.
Oh, wow. Really?
And then now they're all coming back like, oh my God, you're doing so great. We see you on stages all over the world. This is so awesome. Like, always knew you could do it, kind of thing. But, it was like you were there at the beginning, then in the middle, and then now they're starting to come back around. And I think that's just, always how it is. I mean, even my parents to this day still are confused about what I do. But I think, it's just with building something in general. Like, you're going to have supporters at the beginning, when it's harder in the middle, and then people will come in and out as you build things. But, when it comes to the haters, man, you're always going to have them. Like, you can't please everybody.
How important right now is YouTube for somebody who's building a product? As not very important, very important. Does it matter what type of product you're doing?
Yeah, so I think YouTube is the most underrated platform that there is. And I think everybody thinks when they think of social media, they think Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, LinkedIn. But I think YouTube is the most underrated platform there is. If you look at the statistics, podcast, over 30% of podcast listeners listen strictly on YouTube. The next closest is Spotify at 17%. What is Spotify and like Fountain that you guys know, they're all starting to do now? They're starting to implement video podcast, which I think is telling. There's a million different streaming platforms. Every smart TV has YouTube on it. And you see over time, the amount of people watching on TVs has gone up as well. So you're essentially on every laptop, every smartphone, every single TV that there is. And on top of it, how are you going to voice your, build trust with an audience? I think I like to point out the previous campaign cycle, right? I mean, say what you want about the two presidential candidates, but there was a big glaring difference between the two campaigns. Kamala Harris was very scripted. She wouldn't go on very long form podcasts. Donald Trump, for better or for worse, went on these 3-hour long podcasts and would just talk the entire time. And he won, glaringly because I think that a lot of people just saw, hey, you know what? He's not afraid to go and kind of be himself and build that trust. So YouTube is really good for long form, and I think that's how people build a lot of trust. So whether it's you're raising money or you're trying to sell a product, people want to trust you at the end of the day, and long form content is the key for that. And one last statistic that I always like to throw out is Google and YouTube are the two top search engines. Usually the biggest purchase somebody makes in their life, maybe outside of Bitcoin in this room, but usually it's a house and a car. The number one search engine for new cars is YouTube. So if somebody's looking to spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on an item, they're going to YouTube to figure out the nooks and crannies of that. And I think that's very telling. So, you're not going to build trust, doing the TikTok dances all the time. I think like over time, you've seen a lot of those creators move to long form as well because, those ads are just more valuable, which just shows you that, the advertisers even know that the long form ads are worth more than the short form.
So you're saying not to just use it as like an influencer type of platform, but use it as your product, right? Like as something that you would show off your product or show off like, a demo or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I know people that get a couple hundred views on their YouTube channel, but they, the beauty of YouTube is that it's a decision platform. You have to decide to click on a video to watch it, which means you can frame a video in any way you want and, revolve the idea around that to attract a specific person. And because YouTube has Google and, the YouTube search engine behind it, it really does know what you want. And I'll go to bat and say that I think it has the best algorithm out of any of them because, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, they all feed you content, but YouTube, you have to decide. So I know people, I've had clients as well that I've helped that get, 200-300 views on a video, not 300,000 or 200,000, just 200 to 300. and they've gotten leads that they've cashed in over $10,000 on that one single video just because it was targeted at the right person. So I think the game of social media is changing, where it's not all about how many views you get, but you can make it a little bit more targeted. And I think YouTube is the best platform for that. So that's why I go to bat for that. And I really, when I talk to my marketing clients about all this, I always try to push them towards YouTube, just because that's the key to all of it, is that you can kind of target your audience.
Cool. I want to move into the macro stuff, but before we get into that, I just want to give the room a chance to ask them some questions just around this kind of stuff. Do you guys have any questions for Brandon? Yeah, go for it, Eddie.
So what content do you consider like most? Is it like for you that you see like founders will post kind of like super slop that will get like filtered by feed filter?
Well, what do you mean?
For example, like sometimes like what kind of like, for example, if you go to LinkedIn or to Twitter, what kind of like content have you seen like a lot of founders like posted? Is that horrible?
Yeah, so I think what I notice a lot of times is I see a lot of founders go, they'll go ChatGPT some post about, whatever their product launch is. And they'll maybe write a couple sentences, and they won't really give a peek into their life. And, I actually talked to Keith about this recently. He's building a company called Bronta. I think he's come out to Austin a few times. But I noticed him posting a lot on LinkedIn, and I reached out to him. I said, it's good that you're posting, but open up the door a little bit to your life. And he even brought it up. He's like, yeah, I post my surfboard every now and then, and those always get the most interaction. And I think that's what people want to see as part of the journey. Like, they want to, maybe every, if you're posting 3 times a week, maybe like 1 to 2 of those, like kind of a personal story, or something that you did, or something that, really stuck out to you, just some little moment. And I think, a lot of founders are just trying to be very business oriented, very serious. And I think at the end of the day, people just, like I said, want to do business with people. So they want to connect to a brand through a person, and not necessarily connecting to a brand through, some sort of like slogan. Like if you look at Nike and some of these other big brands, they all had faces associated with them. Like Nike blew up because they, partnered with Michael Jordan. Obviously, he became like the greatest basketball player of all time, but the second best selling shoe behind Michael Jordan was Penny Hardaway. And, unless you guys are huge basketball aficionados, I doubt very many of you guys know who Penny Hardaway is, because he got injured. His career was really short, but what they did was they built up a commercial, they built up some figures, and I encourage you to go look it up kind of after it, but they built like a little, bobblehead figure called Little Penny, and it's still like he's outsold LeBron James, he's outsold Kobe Bryant, and it's all because they built this character around him. And I think that's what, just to highlight, like people want to do business with people instead of brands.
Great advice.
I have a follow-up question. What was his character?
He had like Lil Penny.
It was Chris Rock that voiced it, I think.
Yeah, Chris Rock was like Lil Penny, and they had like a bobblehead.
Have you gotten like any? Have you gotten noticed like locally back home, like by any of the news stations or any like local outlets? I guess back home. Showed you any love?
Oh, well, here, of course. Every time I come back to Austin. I mean, there's always like, some foundations in Florida that I speak at. I mean, there's Bitcoin Day in like Naples, Bitcoin Bay, the guys in Tampa. I'm always speaking at their events and doing that. I wouldn't say like any local like news outlets like Fox or anything like that. Not yet. Maybe one day. I don't know. But I think that there is, I think something, I went to a podcasters meetup actually, so this might parlay into something for you guys that could be interesting. But like the local news stations, they're always looking for slots to fill. And one of the guys that I met at this podcasters meetup, he says that these local like Fox or, whatever, CNBC stations or whatever it is, they're always looking for like 31-hour slots. So if you've got something interesting or a story that's interesting, reach out to them. Like half the time, they're just looking for bodies or a story to put out there. And so, you know, if you have like a compelling enough story or something that's interesting, you know, that might be a good person to reach out to kind of get yourself some local buzz. Whether it's an event you know, you're launching something, and like half the time they'll let you just come on for free if you're bug them enough. But you have to make sure that you have a good enough reason so they let you come back as well. So be wise with that. Don't just be like, all right, let's go. I'm building this thing. Try to pick your spots with that. But there is potentially an opening there that I don't think a lot of people are utilizing.
That was a really
Cool.
good question.
Yeah.
Like the fall through of that was good because I never thought that question local buzz, but that's actually a pretty smart and tangible way to get your face out there just because they have a need that you never thought of. I would never thought that, you know, Quita Culpepper wanted to have me and, you know, whatever we're doing. So that's actually really good advice. I never would have expected.
Yeah, he has a PR agency, the guy that I know that does that, and like he's literally like, yeah, you can just go find their email addresses on their website. So I mean, of course, it's harder to get on like, you know, the big time CNBC, Fox, all that kind of stuff. But you know, I do know people that, you know, you can go try to connect with them on LinkedIn or, you know, maybe use some AI to try to find their email addresses. And, you know, I think a big way to get in with those people is just try to provide value. Hey, if you ever need you know, an expert matter in XYZ, whatever it is, if you notice that they talk about it, just be like, hey, you know, I'm an expert matter in this. You know, I'm happy to answer some questions just kind of behind the scenes to help you. And then I know some people that have actually, you know, hey, we want to talk about this either tomorrow or, you know, in an hour, are you available? And, you know, they've been able to make it on to big time shows because of that. So think about that as well, just trying to see where you're an expert matter and then provide some value. And then, you know, you can get onto big news outlets as well. So it's not only social media, you can also try to use the traditional media outlets as well.
Awesome. Do you have one, Ted?
Yeah. What about content creation? Do you have any tips or tricks like coming up with content that's worthy of putting out there, even if you might think it's not worthy? Like, how do you go about it?
Yeah, success leaves clues. So, you know, what I would say is find content creators that you like or within your niche. Then, you know, go to YouTube, search like a couple keywords relative to that, put maybe like a 4 to 20 minute, you know, filter on there. Because I think it's like usually like shorts or like 4 to 20 minutes or 20 minutes plus. You just do like 4 to 20 minutes, then do it by view count. See what ideas worked. And then you can go to, you know, these creators' pages and, you know, see if like, I don't know, if you're searching mine, for example, right? You go to the videos, click popular, then you see, okay, their average video does, I don't know, 5 to 10,000 views. These videos did 100,000 there. So that must mean this is a good idea. That's how I usually start off with my clients when I first tell them what ideas to use. So like, for example, I had a real estate client. I know that Ken McElroy, he's like a billionaire, you know, real estate investor. He creates a ton of content. So I went to his page, I clicked popular. The #1 video was rich people own nothing. Here's what the government doesn't want you to do about money. And then I basically had my client do almost the exact same video, like hook, and then he put his own spin on it. So it's like, I think it was like the rich own nothing. Here's the secret to wealth that they don't want you to know, or something like that. And he had 1,000, you know, subscribers at that point. That video got 11,000 views. Ken McElroy's got a million, but you know that there's obviously levels to it. But still, like, an 1,000 subscriber channel getting a video pop off to like 11,500, that literally doubled his subscriber account with one video. So, you know, going to figure out what works in your niche, I think, you know, you can kind of see the clues that work. You can like copy similar thumbnails, copy similar titles, tweak it, of course, a little bit. But, you know, there is, you know, I guess a formula out there. And don't be afraid to, I wouldn't say like copy it exactly, but, you know, copy in a sense and take some of the ideas, because it's all about the idea with the video and like marketing in general.
Great stuff. Oh, you have one on me?
first of all, that was really interesting, the YouTube information you gave, because I literally work in marketing space, but I didn't realize it was that prevalent in terms of versus the other media people that are out there, get content out. But just to get onto your point about amplifying anything that you're doing from an event standpoint and getting those PR extensions going to have local PR cover those events and getting the messaging out there. I think anything that you do that ties in some sort of charity component to what you're doing on the ground gets the PR out there in a natural way where local PR actually want to cover it because you're giving something back to the community. So I think as you're thinking about doing events on a local basis, try to tie in any charity opportunities within those local events, because not only does that create brand love for your event amongst the people, you're giving back something to the community, and the PR angle makes more sense for people to cover that event because of the PR, but because of the charitable angle that you're.
Yeah, and just to echo that point as well as like, you know, the success leaves clues. Who's the most subscribed YouTube channel in the world? It's Mr. Beast. And if you watch any one of his videos, he's giving away money on like every single one. So just like the charitable aspect and changing people's lives, people like to feel some sort of emotion with that. So any way that you can, I guess, like spark some positive emotion in content is always, you know, a positive as well. So just to follow up on that, like adding a charity angle in any kind of like local event or something that you're doing can always help amplify for sure.
Great stuff. Oh, Austin.
If you had a client that was like early stage builder, maybe solo founder, you know, I don't know, someone like that. What would be, let's say they're paying you a lot of money. You want them to win so hard. What do you want them to do? What do you want them to understand and lean into? Given the fact that like they really honestly have higher priorities in doing the actual thing, doing the actual building, but then this marketing is so important, it gives you so much leverage, like Jack Mahler's. You know, what do you want that person doing?
Yeah, I mean, so if it was just somebody that I was talking to, I would try to push them to do this. But if it was my client, for example, and I think this is where like you have to think as a founder, you know, what I have learned over the years is I need to find my most high leverage activities. So whatever I can make the most money doing, I need to double, triple, quadruple down on that. And so everything else, hire out. So if you are not good at content, or you don't enjoy writing the scripts or enjoy coming up with the ideas, find somebody that can help you do it and make your life easier so it's not an added, you know, stress of yours. So if I had a client like this, I would basically say, hey, and this is what I've done to some of the clients I've had before is, hey, I've got, you know, 3 or 4 ideas. I could either send you the scripts beforehand or send them to you, you know, afterwards. Here's some ideas that I think that you could really talk about very well. All I need you to say is look at the camera, say this for, you know, the first like 30 seconds or a minute, and then just talk about, you know, what you would talk about normally around this topic, and just kind of let them work their magic and not try to make it so it's, you know, all right, you have to sit back behind a camera and read an entire script and it doesn't feel real. I think, you know, maybe that's more on like the content creation side of things, but I would essentially just try to make their job easier and just say, hey, you know, here would be something that you can pull and draw people in initially on this idea. And then I've heard you talk about these things before. I know you're smart and knowledgeable about this. You know, I know that this would be a good video. This is how I'm going to frame it. You know, you just sit back, record, and then let me do the rest. That's, you know, kind of how I would frame it in that sense. But, you know, if you're a one-time, you know, one-person founder, you don't have any capital to kind of help do this, you don't really need a lot of upfront money in order to create content. And I think that's kind of a misnomer. I went from 1 to 10,000 subscribers simply by opening my MacBook, no microphone, no nothing. My logo was made, I think I actually have it here, yeah.
I used to give you so much crap for that logo.
Yeah, so this is my original logo. I made it on PowerPoint with a buddy of mine when I first started. And eventually, like a friend of mine was like, Brandon, I've seen your logo like a few different times and it's terrible. Please just let me make you one. I said, fine, you know. But I went from 1 to 10,000 subscribers with that. You know, terrible lighting. I was opening my MacBook. So I think everybody thinks it needs to be perfect right away. You know, I have videos with over 50,000 views and it's just, you know, it's not great quality editing. It's not great, you know, sound, but it was good content and a good idea. So I think, like, you know, if you're a founder just looking to get started, just put it out there, see what happens.
Yeah, the other thing I'd mention is just because I see it all the time, I think, like, if you're an early stage startup, if you could just focus on one social media platform at a time, especially if you don't have the personnel to do more than one. Like, I think of like Stacker News, like he didn't have anybody, I don't think, in the beginning, but he focused just on YouTube, and I think that's definitely paid dividends for him. The other thing I would mention, if you do have capital, definitely get somebody that can just do everything, like a biz dev type, because most people in the ecosystem that are early stage founders are usually on more on the technical side. So you can have that one other person doing all the media stuff, biz deving, and kind of speaking for you. It makes things a lot easier for you. Yeah, and they usually have fractional people to do that too. So.
Yeah, like it to the introvert part that we were talking about earlier, if you feel like that's never going to be you, like you are very against that, like Carr said, there's definitely people out there that, you know, you have to find somebody aligned with your mission, of course, but somebody that would be willing to build it with you that could be the quote unquote face of the brand, as long as you're comfortable with that.
Cool. We have any other questions before we get into the macro stuff? No? Okay. This is what I wanted Brandon here for. Brandon, what is going on with the price of Bitcoin, and should founders be afraid?
Yeah, so this is being described as Bitcoin's IPO moment. So for those who, I mean, I guess all you guys are founders here, but an IPO moment is essentially like the early stage investors now are starting to get out and sell their Bitcoin. And this has been going on all year, longer and more than it has in any other cycle. So I think a total of like 9 million coins that have been sitting in wallets for over 10 years have gotten sold within this past year. So in any other time in Bitcoin's history, that would have crashed the price a lot more than it did. So Bitcoin actually falling to 80K was actually somewhat bullish going forward. You know, what we've seen is we've seen a lot of institutions start to come in. So to follow up on that IPO point, this is now, you know, you have that IPO, like the PayPal mafia, or whoever it is, right? You guys go ring the bell, you take a little cash out, you sell a little bit of your stock, and now, you know, the big time investors, like we're seeing the BlackRocks, the banks, all of these people with big pools of capital are now starting to come in because they didn't want that risk of Bitcoin in the early days, or that perceived risk. And now they see Bitcoin as like, you know, a $2 trillion asset, so they want to buy a little bit. So they're buying, and they're buying in big numbers. I mean, we've seen 64 Bitcoin treasury companies were around when Trump got elected last year in November. There's 210 now. So there's over 1 million Bitcoin that are on Bitcoin treasury companies' balance sheets. There's 1.5 million in ETFs now that weren't a thing, you know, 2 years ago. So we're seeing a lot of the big money and the big pools of capital start to come in, and they're utilizing financial engineering to scoop up more Bitcoin. So maybe I can get into that here in a second. But essentially, we've seen a lot of whales sell, and the buying pressure from the big guys hasn't been able to sustain the price up as it stands right now. But normally in Bitcoin cycles, it's retail that's pushing that up. And we're actually seeing retail sell, which I think is kind of interesting too.
So as a founder, somebody who's building a company, how concerned should they be right now since the price is dumping?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're, you know, Bitcoin, when you try to, I guess, predict the market, you're always going to get fooled, I guess. So I think everybody was thinking, oh, Bitcoin's price is going to do very well towards the end of this year. And obviously it didn't. It came down a little bit. So what I would say is that, you know, with building a Bitcoin company, right, you always have to be very conservative and realize like it's always potentially going to get a little bit worse, and always potentially going to get a little bit better. So you have to make the decisions and be smarter with your capital when you're building with that, and then also think like if you're building this treasury, it's for the long term. So still have some sort of, I guess, cash balance for a couple months at a time. I mean, we even saw Michael Saylor and Strategy do that, where they're building these dividend products, and instead of raising money to buy more Bitcoin, 1 week this year they rose money to just hold as a cash reserves in order to pay their dividends for like 9 months, just in case Bitcoin's price crashes so much and they're unable to raise money, that they're still able to pay the dividends for their investors. So if the big guys are doing it, it should be it should be telling of some signs how you should utilize your balance sheet as well.
Good stuff. Can you talk about the financial engineering that's kind of going on in the space, and is that something to be concerned about, or?
I wouldn't say it's something to be concerned about. I would say it's something to just keep an eye on, because essentially all of these Bitcoin treasury companies, they're utilizing the stock market in order to raise a bunch of money to buy more Bitcoin. So when the Bitcoin's price dips, those should be looked at as opportunities for small investors. So Michael Saylor's building products that are trying to compete with the $300 trillion bond market, the $145 trillion fixed income market, and then he also talked about trying to go after the $200 trillion credit market. So that's like $700 trillion that I'm talking about right here. That's not like a small amount of money. Even if he's able to capture 0.1% of that, that would send Bitcoin's price shooting up a crazy amount. But something that we see on the flip side of things is that Bitcoin is actually starting to play out like a traditional asset, which I think is pretty alarming. The narrative around the Bitcoin space has been, it's always been for the small fish. But if you look at the wallets with 0.1 Bitcoin or 10 million sats, about $9,000 today, the number of those wallets actually went down after this recent dip. And same with the number of wallets with 0.01 or like $900 worth of Bitcoin. So what does that mean? That means that the big players are buying, and that when we see these dips, they're buying from retail who's selling from the small amounts as well. So it's not only the whales are selling, it's also the retail people that have been in here for a short period of time. So what I would say is that we're still very early. If you look at the number of wallets with $900 worth of Bitcoin right now, there's about 11 million of them. There's 62 million millionaires in the world today. So it's like 4 or 5 times more rare to have like $900 worth of Bitcoin than it is to be a millionaire. And then on the flip side of that, there's like 42 million wallets with $1 worth of Bitcoin. So it's even more rare to own like $1 worth of Bitcoin than to be a millionaire globally right now. So we're still very early. So I would just say, like, when you see all of these big numbers and the big players, it shouldn't discourage you from getting into the market. It just, if they're seeing the value in it, you should as well, and you should try to allocate some sort of, your portfolio to it and at least start buying in.
Great stuff. I don't think we have. We got 2 more minutes. Yeah, I kind of want to ask you now that you kind of went through that. What are some of the builders that you've interacted with this cycle, or I guess this year, that if there's any kind of like stuff that you can share that they do really, really well that you think other founders should do as well too, especially now that we're entering a bear market?
Yeah, one of them I always like to shout out Francisco at Yopaki. He's building here at PlebLab. I think I was really encouraged when I went down to the startup day in Mexico and seeing kind of how he's building out in his local community. So just kind of building on what G asked earlier. I think that's the best place to start, is try to build out your local network and see wherever you're at. There's people that are out there that are willing to help you. So obviously, we've got PlebLab here, and I know a lot of you guys come from that community as well, and you guys all help each other out. I would say, start there, but then also try to branch out. Don't be content with, just building there. Francisco, he's built here at PlebLab. I know he's here in Austin sometimes. He went to Wolf in New York, and then, he went to Merida in Mexico, and I know he goes down and travels a lot to try to build something there because he knows that's where his audience is. Obviously, when you're building online or building some product, your audience can be all over the world. So I would say pick your spots, but definitely try to, branch out. And there's really, it's really powerful to try to branch out and meet other people in different areas in order to try to help build whatever it is you're building.
Great advice. Any other founders that you think that you've seen this year?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe.
I'll shout out Ted here. I think what Ted is doing is great, but I think a big thing that I take away from Ted is he asks a lot of questions, which I think is a great quality to have. He's even doing it up here. He's saying, hey, fill out the survey. He's trying to figure out what his customer wants and trying to distill that. I think, sometimes it could be maybe a little bit of an overload, but what I do think is that just getting some of that and being able to filter it yourself and see what your audience really wants and what's feasible, and then you can get some ideas from that. Because I think we as founders kind of, I guess, romanticize either content or romanticize a product. I heard this story from this guy. He has a podcast, The Diary of the CEO, and it's always stuck with me. He was talking to this big crowd in New York City, and he said that he would build these big giant Facebook groups for like college freshmen every time he was coming in. They would get all these people in, and then they would be interacting back and forth, and then he would be like, all right, if you guys want to keep this going, I'm going to shut this down in 2 days' time, then go and do it on my website. And nobody would come over. And so he did that like 3 or 4 years in a row until finally he gave up and just was like, all right, maybe I'll just go in on this social media. And so basically that's, he was romanticizing the idea that people were going to want to do this on his website when really he was just listening to his audience. So that's kind of a way that I take away from Ted, is that he's really good at listening to his audience and asking those questions. And I think even, the highest up people that I see creating content are doing the same thing.
All right, we're going to go to lightning round. Got some funny ones here.
All right.
You're trapped on an island with one Bitcoin media show besides yours. Which one is it?
Oh, that's a good question.
Robin Sayer?
Huh?
Is it Robin Sayer?
Robin Sayer does a podcast like every day. Well, now he's like...
You don't want to be on the island with him also doing a podcast every day with him?
No, and I don't know. Simply Bitcoin's entertaining. I listen to all the TFTC episodes now that I work with him.
I feel like Nico would share his coconut, right? On an island, right?
Yeah, he would help, I think.
All right, I got one more. What's a trend you're seeing in the Bitcoin space that you're begging people to stop doing?
Ooh. I think in the Bitcoin space and on the internet in general, people make fun of creators for doing the same thing, but then they end up doing the same thing to make fun of those creators. So like,
give me an example on a person.
The big meme now is everybody says like pleb slop or like AI slop, and so like they'll make fun of creators for doing the same thing. But then it's like I'll get 50 replies of the same exact comment. So it's actually like their thing is actually the same exact thing. So that drives me crazy. And then what also drives me crazy is that people think that the algorithm hates them or hates the Bitcoin content. Yeah. And I think that that's a huge misconception. And I hate it when people cry online about that.
What do you say to people that go to different conferences around the world? Doesn't have to be Bitcoin. Do you think it's a distraction machine, or you think it's actually a net positive for people to go, especially founders?
I think that the different conferences have different purposes. So there's startup days, where potentially there's going to be some venture capitalists. So it depends what you're going out there for. There's the big ones where it's essentially just there's so many events and so many different things, it's almost overwhelming. And then there's like the medium-sized ones that have like 200 to 300 people. So what I would say, like I actually got asked this by a guy just randomly at a networking event. He's like, "What do you think of networking?" And I would say like you need to have more pointed networking. So going to these conferences and spending money. If you think that there's somebody going to be there, one, try to confirm with them before that they're going to be at this conference. Meeting with people face to face, building that connection over time is really important. Outside of like the long form content, it's another way to build the trust. So networking and building those relationships over time in person is the way to do it. And sometimes that takes traveling to these different locations. So I would say just make sure that figure out who you want to interact with and see if you can get a contact information from them prior and try to set something up while you're there beforehand, because when you get into those conference environments, it's hectic and things can change on a snap of a finger and people can get being pulled all different directions. So try to set something up beforehand. And if you can't get a hold of some of these people and this was the reason you were going out there, you got to understand it's a risk to go out there to try to find them, especially if you're going to a conference with like 30,000 people.
I love it. That's all the questions I have. Do we have any questions here in the audience that you would like to ask Brandon? Yeah, go ahead.
What's Bitcoin?
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is peer-to-peer electronic cash. There you go.
Anybody else?
Why
back there.
whales be selling at this time?
I think it was just like a mental, number they wanted to hold until it got over 100,000. So, you saw once it got over 100,000, a lot of dormant accounts that hadn't moved Bitcoin for 10 years, all of a sudden now we're selling. So I think it was just a big mental number. And once we passed that, people were just kind of, I wouldn't say like jumping off the ship, but just cashing out.
I also say like the last 2 startup days we've had, we've been all-time highs on those days. I think we hit 125K in Merida. Then we hit the year before in 24 was also, I think that's when we hit like 60 something or something like that. So it's always fascinating to watch that on startup day. The price just goes crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, he had a
I
question.
serious question actually.
Okay.
I started what's the main YouTube, your commercial one? About 10 years ago, I was just joking. I was going to do a raffle. $1 did it. I was just thinking, would that be like something somebody might want to buy? Is that like leveraging a good name for a brand? I guess if you have something.
What's the name of it?
$1 did it.
$1 did it?
Yeah.
Oh, is that where you like trade something up and then you?
I don't know. I didn't do anything with that. I don't have a single video on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean,
I was just because I bought. I was looking for some. Anyways, that's a long question.
yeah, that's like buying domains. That's not really, it's kind of similar.
No.
I mean, I don't know. I like, some guy has the Green Candle Twitter handle and he hasn't been active since 2011. So
He's just like parking on it.
yeah, I messaged Twitter support to see if I could try to get in. They're like, we don't help with that. So
Go ahead.
There's all this like dumping of Bitcoin at like 10 a.m. I don't know if you've last like few sessions. Do you have any heard any news of who's doing that?
well, usually like if it's at 10 a.m., that's like kind of during trading hours. I know that the ETFs have been dumping here recently. So I know when the market opens, it's been a lot of ETF outflows for the first time in like this entire year that we've been seeing pretty consecutive outflows. So it probably is most likely the ETFs, I would say.
Cool. I think that's everybody. Oh, one more. Yeah, go for it.
What's going on? I thought I saw some stuff about China recently, or some people were mentioning China. I don't know if it was like miners or.
Are they back?
Yeah, China banned Bitcoin mining again. So they've done it, I think they did it in 2017, 3 or 4
Again, they
times.
announced that they did it again?
Yeah, they did
Okay,
it
we're
again
definitely
this
in a bear
time,
market.
so, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, China has done this like multiple times, as you guys have know. But every single time, if you look at where the hash rate is coming from, the miners come back online in China. A lot of them last time moved to Kazakhstan. So who knows, like maybe Borat's mining Bitcoin at this point. I have no idea.
Cool stuff. Well, Brandon, thank you so much for flying out here from Tampa Bay. Appreciate you, and Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah,
That's
Merry
Bitcoin Builders
Christmas.
Club.
Thanks for having me.